Last episode we were on Orkney and ended up having a lot more to cover than I anticipated. So, to keep runtimes reasonable, we trimmed our trip around Rousay into a separate episode. Now, I realised last time I launched into Orkney like everyone was 100% caught up and needed no explanation of any of it. And sure, while, quite a number of ancient history enthusiasts may have also visited Orkney in the past and have a rough idea of how everything's laid out, I can't really assume that for a general audience. So I figure a quick rundown of Orkney's various islands might be in order. So this is what the island chain looks like. It continues pretty much straight up from the nose cone of mainland Scotland. Your main options for getting there are threefold. Flying there is expensive. Loganair will gladly take about £150 from you for just a one-way flight, and that, of course, does not include the cost of you getting to whichever Scottish airport in the first place. So the ferry is quite a bit cheaper, and your main options are either leaving from Scrabster, which we tried first time. The folks running that did not go out of their way to ingratiate themselves, let's say, but can't lie, the views of Hoy did become a highlight of the trip. In fact, you can catch a music video of that in the top right. Anyway, for this trip, we were actually taking the Aberdeen route, which is longer on the boat, but actually connects with public transport links much better. Since we brought up Hoy, this is one of, though not entirely the southernmost island of the chain, but it is unquestionably the highest and most dramatic. We had something of a day trip there, and while the midges were very keen to make friends with our blood vessels, the island is unquestionably spectacular. The rest of Orkney is not really mountainous like this. I mean, sure, it has some hills, but nowhere near the same scale. This block in the middle is what's known as the Orkney mainland, which is a bit of an oxymoron. That's a bit like saying an island that is 100% surrounded by land. Like, the phrase doesn't really make sense, but it's the biggest chunk by far. It has two of the most prominent towns of Stromness in the west and the capital Kirkwall in the east. Now, I can't claim to have an exemplary scorecard when it comes to visiting all of Orkney's islands. A lot are small and have comparatively little to offer visitors. In fact, for many, you'd have little reason to go other than being some sort of hardcore cartographical completionist. Take Grahamsay here between the mainland and Hoy. I mean, I'm not trying to trash the locals, but it's a couple of farms, not a tremendous amount else. Grahamsay is really not looking or equipped for a bunch of visitors to come and hang out for long periods. But it's not only down to the mainland to have all the fun. To the north, there are some somewhat larger islands. I wish I had better views, but on our crossing they were cloaked in fog, so I think that's Shapinsay out there. That has a couple of cool things, a castle and a broch. We briefly saw Westray, which is modestly large, if sparsely settled, but mainly through the windows of a minibus because we were trying to get to Papa Westray. Now, this has some way above average things to see for its size, such as the Nap of Hoar, a similar and potentially earlier site to the much more famous Skara Brae. This was definitely worth the effort, and quite a few other things besides. However, it's no exaggeration that a major pull for Orkney is its quite extraordinary Neolithic sites, several of which I've already name-dropped, and I really defy anyone, even someone who openly professes a complete disinterest in history, not to be won over by Brodgar or Skara Brae or others. However, within sight of the Orkney mainland, in fact tantalisingly close at its nearest point, is a medium-sized island with a way above average collection of passage graves from 5,000 plus years ago. And while I'd caught some of these on the mainland in the last episode, the island of Rousay was about to take it up a notch. I must admit, I do find this Egypt of the North branding a bit comical, but I sort of see what they're going for. Didn't have long for all of this, mind. As mentioned last time, I was on a bike and a bit pushed for time, and I don't have a GoPro, so I don't have lots of in-betweensies footage bits to stick all this together. Well, first thing, I cycled all the way to the far side of the south coast to try and get as far as possible and begin with the incredible Mid-How Broch. Just being held back from eroding into the sea, but still in pretty incredible condition. And you can see some outbuildings clustered around it. This was part of a fully fortified settlement. The buildings around were apparently originally built as domestic structures, but in later centuries were used more as workshops. And while you're here, there's this weird barn-looking thing that's spoiling the view until you realise that this contains the Mid-How Chamber Tomb, a vast, if rather fragile-looking, Neolithic tomb protected from the elements by a movie set borrowed from the first Captain America film. This is a type of structure known as a stalled cairn because of the transverse stones across the central passage, and yet this one is way above average in size. The gantry definitely helps with a sort of better top-down view. I wish I could have lingered a bit longer around there. Just the coast alone was unbelievable, but lots to see. From there, it was the Knowe of Lero, skirting around some slightly intimidatingly curious cows. While the passage is a bit obscured, so you can just make out the entrance, and getting down a bit lower to the ground, you have something of a view in. It then took probably longer than it was worth to find the Knowe of Ramsay, mainly because it's not overly distinctive in the landscape. I mean, this appears to be it. Sadly, this has a lot less to offer you as a visitor, as when it was excavated in 1935, it was discovered stones had already been taken from it for local building. Hence, pretty much just a mound now. But onwards to the Knowe of Yarso, this is really impressive. With all of these, they've been excavated in a way we almost certainly wouldn't do nowadays. Just all the turf and soil stripped away until you just have the stone. And then what you see now are these sort of air raid shelters, which are sort of built atop and then covered over with grass. Yeah, I mean, with a bit of headroom, you can definitely see the stalled cairn form better. Yarso is a bit higher up, and while it's modestly easy to find your way up there, it is a bit more of a mish, but it definitely enjoys a prime spot overlooking the Einhallow Sound between Rousay and the mainland. Well, past this standing stone in the village, then it was the Black Hammer Chambered Tomb, always a bit more intimidating when there's a hatch, again with the Lost vibes. It's another stalled cairn with 7 chambers. About 1,000 years after its construction, the entrance was deliberately sealed, which also goes away to explaining why we're entering through the roof. I hadn't remarked on this, but if all of these look a little green inside, yeah, unfortunately the design of putting skylights in these reconstructed mounds does light them beautifully, but it also clearly allows for this green mould. I mean, I assume this counts as mould. Anyway, yeah, it's a trade-off. I'm guessing the sort of abrasive chemicals you'd need to take this off regularly, yeah, they'd probably do more harm to the stone underneath, so no easy answer, but perhaps preferable to keep these places largely in the dark. And finally, the Tavistow Tuck, and it's kind of doing these an injustice running them all together like this, as on camera they all start to look similar. This one is actually on multiple levels, though curiously they were not connected when they were originally made. Had an interesting reminder of this on a recent trip to Denmark. We were on the smaller island of Mon, and there was a double passage grave there, which is quite rare. Again, Mon had quite kind of similar vibes to Rousay, I mean, apart from the glorious sunshine, just like a smaller island, but with an above average concentration of burial mounds. Yeah, it's a brilliant place to see. But yeah, Rousay alone would have been reason enough to make the trip to Orkney, and again, the beautiful sun was just making it. It was also making it extremely hot to cycle as hard as I was, but this is a day I will never forget. The views were just unreal. It was the most incredible place to be. And all too soon, boat back. Now, I wasn't going to do this, but you know what? I'm just going to come clean. It makes the flow of information in this script much smoother if I just run all the Rousay sites west to east, except, yeah, to be perfectly honest, by the time I got the ferry on this first day, it was early afternoon, and while there are about 4 to 5 boats to Rousay a day, which is not bad, I mean, it could have very easily been stripped to just 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, but as with many of Orkney's islands, the 5 p.m. or shortly before is the last boat, and you miss that, you're staying overnight, no buts. With that in mind, and setting foot on the island about 2:30 if I recall, even though I cycled as hard as I could, it soon became clear that there was way too much cool stuff on Rousay, and I had overfaced myself. Now, I was not content just to do half of everything. As I mentioned earlier, Orkney is pretty hard to get to if you're not dropping quite a lot of money on flights, and I can't just be there next year and revisit. So this first afternoon, I ended up catching about half of what I wanted before I had to pedal like crazy not to miss that final boat. And so then, the following day, I just decided I'd get the bus, go to Tingwall again, and hit Rousay for a second day to catch the bits I missed. In terms of our overall Orkney itinerary, if you really want to know, this was in place of seeing Skara Brae under blue skies, but honestly, I actually got pretty great coverage of that last time. And I did want to see the Brock of Borwick on the west coast, which, yes, I've not managed to tick off. But look, just as far as the cycling was going, having already worn myself out an embarrassing amount in the sort of ballpark 14 miles from Kirkwall to Tingwall, the close to 50-mile round trip needed to get that far over to the west coast, just not happening. Neither my thighs nor butt cheeks were surviving that, and I need those for my career as an exotic dancer, which I'm sure is going to take off any day now. So yeah, you know what, I was half considering covering this with a little white lie, but there it is. Both the "you do things too fast" crowd and the actually crowd can bite my, at time of writing, very sore butt. Now, admittedly, I had to summarise these sites quite quickly. It's one of the things with making travel episodes. If I get too granular about ancient history, then we have a casual audience clicking off really quickly. But as a channel, we're moving towards more history-focused episodes while still keeping our sense of adventure for travelling further afield to expand on all of this. And yeah, we've got a lot still to catch on Neolithic sites, whether it's Germany and more Central Europe, where the standing stones get fewer and fewer, or maybe Anatolia, where you have some of the earliest sites of organised and permanent human settlement, and then all the way to France, with its bafflingly dense concentration of dolmens and standing stones. Similarly, Iberia and Ireland, even all the way up to Scandinavia. We just briefly made it there for the first time. And, I mean, yeah, still a lot to catch around Scotland and other pieces in England and Wales. It's a lot. But before that, we are about to kick off our series from the British Iron Age, which is where you get the Brocks, but also hill forts. And you know what? We have a trailer for this. Let's just roll that. So that is all coming extremely soon on the channel. Meanwhile, if you want to support what we do, we don't have a Patreon at this point, but we do have a Bandcamp. That's where you can find all the music you've been hearing in these episodes, and that's also a place you can support us, either by buying our releases, or you can just stream them for free as well. That's also fine. But yes, you can also find a lot more of what we do on Bluesky, so make sure to follow us there, and please subscribe so you can see what's coming up, and we'll catch you very soon.